Greetings. My name is Dr. Mark Gosher, Vice President for Arkansas AASCD, and we are proud to present a Power to Survive Pocket PD series. Once a month for the next 4 months, we will release one 15 to 20 minute video interview from Arkansas educators. The first conversation is entitled, Arkansas Teachers, You Are Enough. It is a quick conversation about preserving the social and emotional health of our educators during this fast-paced COVID response wrought with change. The series is designed for educators to enjoy alone, with a PLC, or embedded in a faculty meeting to start supportive conversations and reflections. We hope that you find this series helpful in your schools. We see what you're doing out there, and we appreciate you. And Arkansas teachers, you are enough. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. My name is Takuma Williams. I've been an educator here in the state of Arkansas for 9 years. All of those years spent in Bentonville School District. I love this state and I love this district, but we're going through some very unprecedented times. While many are working from home, we're on the front lines working with our kids trying to get them across the finish line. The AASCD recognizes this trauma inherent in this responsibility and created this Power to Survive series to provide the opportunity for teachers and staff members to reflect, validate, and inspire each other during these difficult times. Today, I want to take some time to reflect on what it means to be an educator during a global pandemic. We want to acknowledge and validate the enormous amounts of flexibility, growth, and grit being expected from every one of you every year, but especially this year. I can't help but think of my mother during these times. She was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas, and was an educator for 26 years. I remember those days that she felt completely drained coming home after a long day working with kids. So I can imagine how you all are feeling during this time. It's our hope to provide some inspiration and some very specific tools to help you manage and conquer those difficult days and nights. We'll be talking about 6 specific strategies and some tools within those strategies that will help you reach that goal. Why don't we start off by letting our esteemed panelists introduce themselves.
My name is Lauren Rose. I am a licensed certified social worker and have been since 2016. This is my first year in the role of student support counselor at Bentonville West High School. Previously, I worked as a school-based therapist and in a psychiatric hospital for children and adolescents.
Hello, I'm also Lauren. I am Lauren Mitchell. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been working in the mental health field for about 12 years. Most of that has been within the school districts. I am currently serving in my 3rd year as the student support counselor at Bentonville High School.
All right, we're so glad you're both here. Let's jump right in. I was recently doing some research on teacher self-care and self-maintenance, and I ran across a term, compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is a profound emotional and physical erosion that takes place when helpers are unable to refuel and regenerate. So as I think about this term, I think about talking to a student and having a difficult conversation with them, or getting off the phone after having a difficult conversation with a parent and feeling completely drained. Lauren, what are your thoughts about this concept?
Your example of feeling emotionally drained after talking to a student or parent is absolutely helping highlight how compassion fatigue can manifest. It's not really one particular incident that causes all of this, but a series of emotionally complex situations that come up as you periodically continue to work with students and parents. And with everything going on this year, it makes sense that you will feel completely emotionally exhausted from all these ups and downs. Compassion fatigue is real and can happen to anyone. You are not immune to this, I am not immune to this. And I'm sure that all 3 of us here can agree that we felt this maybe even really recently, right?
Absolutely. And let's be clear, we're not only talking about compassion fatigue here. Essentially, what we're all experiencing during this pandemic is a form of trauma. A lot of times we think of trauma as being this dramatic, singular event, and that can be a trauma, But really, trauma is what happens when an overwhelming amount of stress can exceed your ability to cope. And talk about overwhelming stress. We may be grieving the loss of loved ones. We are being asked to adapt to rapidly changing expectations with little or no notice. We're being bombarded with information that contradicts itself all the time. And we're being asked to remain ever vigilant of our health and safety and the health and safety of others. We're doing all of this without access to a lot of our typical coping skills.
So I think we can all agree that we're all experiencing compassion fatigue, right? But we need to be there for our kids, and we need to build relationships with our parents. So how do we get over this compassion fatigue and still pour all the love we need to pour into these kids?
Absolutely. It's easier said than done. But it always just reminds me what they tell you when you fly, what the flight attendants say during their safety speech. You have to put on your own oxygen mask before you can put on anyone else's. And that's really what self-care is about. And I know for me, I see Facebook articles all the time about like, do this for self-care, do that for self-care. But I know that I don't have the time or energy at the end of a day to go to the gym or, even sometimes things like taking a long bubble bath just really sound like not fun to me. But that's the beauty of self-care, is that you do things that work for you. For me, one of my self-care rituals is on Sunday afternoons, I do meal prep for the week. And that it makes the rest of my week go so much more smoothly. And so that's what self-care is making those small steps now to keep me charged and ready to keep going through the week, to keep helping others.
Exactly, that's along the same lines of what I do. Like on Sundays, I like to, or over the weekend in general, I like to make healthy meals and try to find new ways to cook healthy meals and make them taste good. Or go into the gym, I like to go into the basketball gym and work out and do that kind of thing. That's what kind of fills my bucket. And that's the goal, I think, is to fill our buckets so then we can be there to support, kids and parents. What about you, Lauren? Do you have some strategies?
Yeah, like Lauren had said, I might not always have, an hour or two to do things. So I usually take mini breaks, 10 to 15 minutes, where I'll paint my nails, maybe diffuse some essential oils, that kind of thing, just to make sure that I can be present in the moment and remind myself that reality check that it will get better and things are okay. But I also have to remember my psychological and physiological needs. A good example of a physiological need is to, instead of maybe getting fast food for lunch, I'll go grab a salad, because healthy eating habits equals healthy mind. However, sometimes we need cookies, and that is a great way to self-care as well, right? Right.
So all of those things are great, but how do we, but it's hard to practice self-care during this time. Can we talk about some strategies that maybe teachers can use right now to practice those self-care things?
Of course. Our first strategy that we've come up with is customizing the self-care plan. It really is about knowing our individual selves and what makes us feel better, not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. Like you said, you like to go to the gym. That would be the opposite of me. I'm not going to that gym ever. So if that stresses me out, I'm not doing that. And so really listening to your inner self and understanding what you need in that moment and what works for you. Remember that self-care does save time by making us more productive and more sane.
Exactly, Lauren, you make a great point. And for me, it might be listening to Alanis Morissette or some folk music or something like that. But that's not everybody's jam, So, you hear the term fake it till you make it. How do we find what's valuable to us or what's important to us? Because, sometimes we can't find that inner peace. What are we doing then?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Sometimes we don't have that inner peace, and that really leads us to our second strategy, which is to acknowledge but not be paralyzed by uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. Really, it's just about acknowledging the elephant in the room. You, me, all of us will experience those negative and uncomfortable feelings. We'll experience anger, fear, sadness, grief, but we'll also get to experience the joy and love and pride. And that ability to experience all of those feelings is what really makes us human. So what happens when we're having those uncomfortable feelings? Well, for one, if you say it out loud, it's a strategy that when we're talking to kids, we call it name it to tame it. If you give that feeling or that thought a name and say it out loud, it really takes away a lot of the power. And the last thing to talk about when we're having these uncomfortable thoughts and feelings is to remember that our brains were designed to recognize danger and threat and sound an alarm. And so when we're having these uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, really it's just our brain doing what it was supposed to do. It's recognizing some sort of threat, whether it's a big threat or not, and sounding an alarm. And so it sounds really silly, but one strategy is to thank your brain. So you can say, all right, brain, I hear you. Thank you. Thanks for doing your job, but we're good. And then go on about your day.
So, it reminds me of something that you said to me at one point in time, Lauren, about pressing pause, about the brain and pressing pause. Do you want to tell me a little bit more about that?
I would love to. I like to say it a lot, like taking a moment to press pause. I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, actually. Taking yourself out of the situation that might be volatile or you might feel reactive, and getting, harnessing your impulse control and understanding, it's okay to take a step back rather than immediately reacting, or, getting your blood flowing and kind of processing before you really do make that decision of what you're going to do next. So really taking that pause and understanding that I am in control of my reactions. I'm not always in control of how I might feel at times, but I can control how I act after that.
Those are some great points, Lauren. And I know I've had to have mindful breathing with this last year's Razorback season, am I right? Yeah. So this next strategy is one that's near and dear to my heart. Do you guys mind if I take this one?
Go ahead.
I think it's important for us to connect with people and during times like this, and to find ways to connect with people. So this fourth strategy talks about meaningful ways to connect. One example is have a weekly check-in with a colleague, either in school or if you're at home doing virtual teaching with someone outside of your home. Establish that as a pattern and make it a priority that you do that on a weekly basis. Find a commitment partner to help hold you accountable. So this is someone that you're close to, or someone that you work close to, quite literally in your hallway, that you can connect with, that can keep checking in on you and when you need it the most and when you need the most help. So another way is finding other ways to connect, like a educator chat room, or the internet, or Pinterest, or local and state organizations. Creating that time with someone else and connecting globally, something like that. Also, you have to find time to connect with family. It's difficult during this time, but you have to make that dedicated time to connect with family, not just to check your son or your daughter's homework, not just to cook dinner, but to actually find personal time with your family and celebrate that time when you do. All of these concepts are rooted in empathy. Empathy is my favorite word because it means that it means so much to the person who you're giving empathy to and the person that is giving that empathy. So this is such an important concept that we need to remember and focus on in this time together. What better way to show empathy than our fifth strategy? Lauren, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So yeah, our fifth strategy is demonstrating gratitude and experiencing joy. And we know that while you are demonstrating gratitude, that means being thankful for things and experiencing joy, that it releases dopamine and oxytocin in our brains, and it activates your prefrontal cortex. What this means is better sleep, higher levels of happiness and optimism. It means you're going to have better decision-making skills and more and stronger connections to the people in your life. So we know that being thankful and demonstrating gratitude is really important. How do we demonstrate gratitude or experience joy when sometimes the world right now feels joyless? Some examples would be to start a gratitude journal. Take some time every evening to review the day and come up with at least one thing you're thankful for. Get in the practice of sending thank you notes. These can be handwritten thank you notes, they can be emails, it could be a post-it note that you leave on the desk of the colleague down the hall. And it can be about little tiny things. It can be about, hey, thank you for running that errand for me, or it can be, hey, I really appreciated it when you smiled at me in the hallway yesterday. That really meant a lot. All right, and the last way that we can express gratitude or experience joy is go on something called an all walk. And that is where you can go out in nature or you can go walk around the school, but you're consciously making the effort to look for things to be thankful for, things to be proud of, things that you may not have ever noticed before. Try to catch a colleague doing something that is really positive, and then make sure to send them a thank you note to acknowledge it.
But the thing is, despite all of these strategies, we have to acknowledge that sometimes we just can't get there, you know, and we have to accept that sometimes we're in that moment. You know, there are other people out there who don't have to be on every day like we do with our kids. You know, we have to be present with them on every day, and we have to constantly show them that we care. And so, you know, what do we do in those moments where we just can't get there with some of these strategies?
I'm really glad you asked that, because our final strategy is reminding ourselves that you are enough. I am enough, you're enough, we all are enough for each other and ourselves. We have to take this self-affirmation and repeat it sometimes every minute if we need to, you know? I mean, it cannot be repeated enough. I am enough. It's very pleasing to hear, it's kind to ourselves, and it makes us feel okay for sometimes not being okay, because enough will help us understand that we are just fine where we are, and we remind ourselves that we are making that difference in the world for these kids, for our families, and for ourselves. And it's always a work in progress. We will never feel 100%, and that's okay. It is okay to not feel okay, but it's also okay to tell yourself that you are enough today and you will be enough tomorrow.
Thanks, Lauren. That's awesome. The last thing I want to say today is just that each and every one of you watching deserves to have your social and emotional needs met. We talk about a lot the social and emotional learning for our students, but you guys deserve that too. So remember to take care of yourself so that you can continue helping others.
I like to keep my final thoughts short and sweet. Please remember that you are worthy and that you are enough and that you are loved.
So I'd actually like to take this moment to say, you two are enough, and you did an amazing job, and thank you so much for your time on this very important topic. And also thank you all for being here today. We hope you've learned a thing or two. We encourage you to take a few minutes to engage with the following reaction and discussion questions, either on your own or with your colleagues at work. Thank you all for joining us, and have a nice day.